The night that should have crowned her future began with golden splendor. Chandeliers glittered like constellations, violins swelled with promise, silk gowns shimmered across the mirrored floors of Fairbourne House, where every whisper spoke the same prophecy. Lady Isabella Fairbourne and Lord Nathaniel Ashcroft will be the love story of the season. She was 19, radiant in a gown of ivory tulle that floated like breath in candlelight, her dark curls gathered with pearls, her smile shy but blooming, and he, heir to the Duke of Ravensmere, stood tall in midnight blue, handsome in the effortless way that made mothers sigh and daughters blush. For months, their courtship had been the whispered dream of every gathering. Nathaniel sought her out in every room, bowed to her with reverence, danced with her as though she were the only woman alive, and Isabella, with a heart too young to guard itself, believed him, believed the softness in his eyes, believed the way he held her hand a moment longer than propriety allowed, believed every stolen smile. She believed in him. Tonight was to be their announcement. Everyone knew it, even the orchestra seemed to play with expectation, each note promising a future already imagined. Isabella felt it too, as Nathaniel approached across the ballroom, moving through the sea of guests with a purpose that set her heart racing. He bowed, she curtsied, their eyes met. "Isabella," he said softly, voice warm as summer, "walk with me." Her breath caught. She took his arm. They moved through the dancers, past the glittering crowd, toward the terrace where soft moonlight painted the world in silver. Her pulse fluttered, her cheeks flushed. This was it, the moment the whole season had led to. When they stepped outside, the night air met them with cool clarity. Lanterns glowed along the terrace. Roses spilled their scent like secrets. She turned to him, eyes bright with hope. "Nathaniel," she whispered, "you wish to speak?" He looked at her, really looked, but there was something strange in his expression, something she had never seen, a shadow behind the affection, a hesitation where there had once been certainty. He removed his glove slowly, as though delaying the inevitable. His voice, when it came, shook with something brittle. "I must end our engagement." The world went silent, the roses stilled, the music inside blurred into distant, meaningless sound. She stared at him, uncomprehending. "And our engagement?" He inhaled sharply, as though the words pained him. "There are rumors, Bella, concerning your father, financial mismanagement, speculations of impropriety, the Fairbourne estate." "My father," she whispered. "Speculations? That is why you?" "It would destroy my standing if I remained tied to—" He stopped himself, jaw tightening, "to uncertainty." A wind swept across the terrace, cold as the sentence he didn't finish. "You are a liability, and I choose myself over you." She felt the truth as keenly as a blade. "Nathaniel," her voice broke, "we could withstand gossip. Rumors die. Love does not." He flinched visibly, but pride straightened his spine. "I cannot risk the Ravensmere name. I am heir to a dukedom, Isabella. My duty must come first. And I," she whispered, "am your love." The words cracked something in her, something too delicate to have ever been entrusted to him. He swallowed hard. "Affection is not enough to weather scandal. Affection, not love." She staggered back a step. "A moment ago, you held my hand as though I were your future." "A moment ago," he said quietly, "your family's name had not been printed in the whispering pages." It was then she understood. He hadn't come to profess love. He had come to sever it, not privately, not gently, but in the only way pride knows, publicly, swiftly, ruthlessly. Inside, the music swelled. Laughter drifted through open doors, and there, under the moon's pale witness, Lady Isabella Fairbourne watched the man she adored choose reputation over her heart. "I thought you were better than this," she whispered. His jaw clenched. "I am protecting what is mine to protect." "And I," she said, voice trembling but steady, "am protecting what is left of my dignity. Go, Nathaniel, before I beg you to stay." He bowed, stiff, tortured, cowardly, and walked away. He didn't look back. Her breath hitched. She clutched the railing. Lanterns blurred into golden stars through the tears she refused to let fall. Someone behind her gasped, softly, the whisper spreading like wildfire. "The engagement is over. The Duke's heir has abandoned the Fairbourne girl." Isabella straightened. The storm would come, the pitying glances, the cruel gossip, the fall from grace. But not tonight. Tonight, She would not break where he could see her. She lifted her chin and walked back inside, head high, steps graceful, heart bleeding beneath silk and pearl. She passed the crowd like a ghost adorned in beauty, moving through the faces that once envied her, now pitying her. She danced once more, spoke to guests, smiled even as her world crumbled under the weight of pride, his pride. And when the night finally ended, she left Fairbourne House knowing one truth with the clarity of lightning striking stone. She would never again allow a man's reputation to determine her worth. The girl who loved him died on that terrace. The woman she would become was born in her place. Paris greeted her, not with gentleness, but with the sharp, glittering indifference of a city that belonged only to the powerful. Its boulevards shone with ambition. Its salons murmured with philosophy and flirtation. Its ballrooms pulsed with a different kind of royalty, the royalty of wit, beauty, and influence. For Isabella Fairbourne, newly exiled from the ruins of her English life, Paris was not a refuge. It was a battlefield, and she meant to conquer it. She arrived with 2 trunks, a broken reputation, and a mother whose health faded with every whisper of scandal they left behind. England had taught Isabella one brutal lesson. A woman without power is a woman without protection. She vowed never to let that be her fate again. Her transformation began quietly like a storm gathering far beyond the horizon. The Parisian salon of Madame Delacroix was a universe unto itself, a glittering temple where poets duelled in verse, painters bartered with their genius, and politicians disguised their intentions in clever smiles. Isabella stepped into that room as a nobody, a foreign girl with a British accent, a fallen reputation, and no title left worth mentioning. But she did not stay invisible for long. Her mind, once overlooked in English drawing rooms, dazzled the French intellectuals. Her questions were incisive, her humor sharp. Her beauty, once fragile, now carried mystery. She listened more than she spoke, observed before she moved, learned before she played. It was Madame Delacroix herself who first took notice. "You do not belong to the shadows, ma chère," she murmured one evening, her eyes glinting. "Paris will love you, if you let it." Isabella's heart, still bruised from English cruelty, answered with silence. But her ambition whispered, "Open the door." 2 months later, her mother passed quietly in a sunlit apartment overlooking the Seine. Exhaustion, heartbreak, and illness, claiming her in ways medicine couldn't heal. Isabella mourned not with tears, but with resolve. When she buried her mother beneath a blooming French magnolia tree, she made a vow between grief and dawn. No one would ever take her future from her again. And fate, strangely compassionate for once, responded. A distant French relative, a count whose bloodline barely touched hers, died soon after, leaving his estates and title in limbo. With no direct heirs, and with Isabella being his last surviving kin, the courts transferred everything to her. Lands near Lyon, artwork of staggering value, and an ancient title rarely used, but undeniably hers. Thus, Lady Isabella Fairbourne of England ceased to exist. Countess Isolde de Lyon was born. Her fortune grew. Her influence expanded. Her story became legend whispered in Parisian corridors. Paris taught her elegance. Power taught her confidence. Pain taught her wisdom. She learned to host salons of her own gatherings where kings' advisors debated philosophy, where composers unveiled new symphonies, where ambassadors sought her opinion with reverence bordering on awe. Her wardrobe transformed as well. No longer the soft pastels of her English girlhood, now she wore deep crimson, royal blue, black silk threaded with gold. Her hair, once worn demurely, now curled freely over her shoulders like flames refusing to be tamed, and her eyes, once soft with romantic foolishness, now glittered with clarity. She did not seek love. She did not long for whispers in moonlit gardens. She sought respect, and she commanded it. The first letter came from an English duchess, a polite invitation to return, if circumstances allowed. She burned it, unread. The second came from a viscountess who had once pitied her. She burned that too. By the 5th letter, invitations from London nobles were piling on her desk like apologies disguised as congratulations. The Duchesses of Kent, Montfort, Ravensmere, all begging for her presence at a royal banquet to honor European dignitaries. Isabella smiled coldly when she saw the last name, Ravensmere, Nathaniel's mother. Once upon a time, she would have trembled. Now, she signed the RSVP with a flourish. The Countess Isolde de Lyon accepts with pleasure. By the time news reached England of the mysterious countess who controlled political conversations in France, who had the ear of half the European court, whose salons shaped the season, Isabella had become a ghost of her former self. She had been reborn, and her rebirth carried power. When she entered Paris's Grand Opera House one evening, the audience rose to greet her. When she walked through the gardens of the Tuileries, even foreign princes paused to bow. But it wasn't admiration that strengthened her. It was knowing she no longer needed anyone's. Because 3 years after Nathaniel shattered her heart in the moonlight, Isabella had learned the truth. A woman does not need a man to crown her. She can crown herself. Then came the moment fate exhaled. A royal envoy arrived with a message. The King of England requested insisted on her presence at a grand diplomatic banquet. The aristocracy would attend, the royal family would attend, and among them, Nathaniel Ashcroft, now the Duke of Ravensmere. He had inherited his father's title, the one he claimed she was unworthy to stand beside. Isabella stood before the mirror, watching her reflection, her expression unreadable. She was draped in champagne silk, diamonds at her throat, a crown of hair and power framing her face. 3 years, she whispered. 3 years, and now you must bow to me. For the first time since that night on the terrace, she allowed herself a small, razor-edged smile. The girl he ruined was gone. The countess he would meet was untouchable. The night of the royal banquet descended upon England with the kind of grandeur that made even the old monarchy stand a little taller. Crystal chandeliers blazed with 1,000 candles, uniforms glittered with medals, gowns rustled like whispered secrets across the marble floors of St. Edmund's Palace. Power gathered here, political, social, and personal. But none shone brighter than the woman poised to re-enter the world she once fled. Countess Isolde de Lyon, Isabella, fairborn reborn. She arrived not in a flurry of nerves, but in a procession of elegance. Her carriage, lacquered black with gold trim, rolled to a stop before the palace steps. Footmen bowed, courtiers froze. The murmurs began instantly. That is her, the Countess of Lyon. She's even more beautiful than they said. The doors opened, and Isabella stepped out. She wore a gown of deep crimson velvet that hugged her waist and fell in fierce, regal waves. Her dark hair was arranged in a crown of curls and gold pins. A necklace of garnets rested at her collarbone, storm-red stones that mirrored the fire in her eyes. Tonight she was not a fallen English girl. She was a force. Inside the ballroom, the Duke of Ravensmere, Nathaniel Ashcroft, stood near the dais, unaware that destiny was walking toward him. He had aged in the 3 years since they parted gracefully, painfully. The boyish charm was gone. In its place was a man carved from regret and responsibility. His eyes, once bright, now held the quiet exhaustion of someone who had lived too long with a choice he wished he could undo. He had convinced himself she was lost to memory. A chapter closed, a wound he deserved. Yet when the herald announced her arrival, the breath left his lungs. Her Excellency, the Countess Isolde de Lyon. Nathaniel turned, and the world fell away. There she stood, framed by light and whispers. Isabella, but not the Isabella he had known. This woman was untouchable, an empress carved from power, command, and grace. She walked as if the room bowed with each step, and in truth, it did. Every noble head turned, every conversation halted, every dancer paused mid-waltz to watch her glide across the floor. Nathaniel felt something inside him fracture. She had once been his gentle promise. Now she was a storm in silk. Their eyes met. For a moment, one shattering, impossible moment, time folded back. The terrace, the moonlight, the words he wished to swallow, the heartbreak he inflicted. Her gaze met his not with tears, not with lingering pain, but with cool, devastating composure. "Your Grace," she said when she reached him, her voice soft and razor-sharp all at once. There was no curtsy, no warmth, only a faint, knowing smile. "It seems the years have been educational." "Countess," he breathed, bowing deeply lower than etiquette required. It is an honor to see you again." "Astonishing," she murmured. "How titles teach humility where character fails." The faintest flush touched his cheeks, but he held her gaze. "You look—" He stopped. Words failed him, admiration tangled with remorse. "You look extraordinary." Her smile was edged with frost. "Power is a flattering mirror, Your Grace. You should try it sometime." a blade hidden in silk. All evening, she moved through the room like a queen among courtiers, each step precise, every glance calculated. Ambassadors bowed, statesmen deferred. Even the Prince Regent lingered at her side longer than was customary. Nathaniel watched from a distance, watched her laugh softly with foreign dignitaries, watched her command conversations with intelligence sharper than any blade, watched her become everything he had once feared and everything he had always desired. He remembered the girl who loved him, with shy eyes and tender promises. But that girl was gone. This woman? This woman could unmake kingdoms. He approached her at last, when she stood by the balcony doors, the night breeze tugging at the velvet of her gown. "Isabella," he began softly. She didn't let him finish. "Countess," she corrected, turning her head slightly. Her profile, illuminated by moonlight, was exquisite, strong, serene, unreachable. "The girl you once betrayed is gone." "I know," he whispered, "and I grieve her every day." Her expression did not change. "You grieve what you destroyed, not who I became." He swallowed hard. "Then allow me to know this version of you, the woman you are now." She turned, finally, facing him fully, and he felt the old ache rise like a wave. "Know me?" she repeated. "Nathaniel, you had the chance to stand beside me when I was small enough to fit inside your world. But now—" She lifted her chin, eyes glittering like garnets under starlight. "You must learn to bow to the woman I became without you." He exhaled a shaky breath. "Isabella, I never meant—" "But you did," she cut in gently, her tone calm, painfully calm. "You meant every word that night. You chose pride, and I chose survival." Her hand brushed past him as she walked away, leaving him standing alone, a duke stripped of certainty, shaken by the realization that he was the lesser character in the story of her rise. As she rejoined the crowd, nobility parted for her like the sea bowing to a storm. Nathaniel watched her with a heart cracking under the truth he had fled for years. He had broken her heart for his pride, and returned to find her crowned in power. The banquet had ended, but its aftershocks rippled through London's nobility for days. Whispering Pages published an entire column devoted to the Countess of Lyon's triumphant return, a fallen English rose resurrected as a French queen. The ton was breathless with envy, fascination, and fear. But no one felt the tremor more than Nathaniel Ashcroft, the Duke of Ravensmere. He had watched Isabella glide through the palace like a celestial force, leaving a wake of awe behind her. He had watched men of influence stumble over their words in her presence. He had watched her command the ballroom with the ease of someone who no longer needed permission to exist, and he had watched her walk away from him without a backward glance. He told himself he deserved the humiliation, but what came next, he did not deserve at all. 3 nights after the banquet, the Duke attended a parliamentary reception, an event of stiff decorum, political maneuvering, and pointed gossip. Conversations drifted in polite currents until a sharp voice sliced through the hum. "Have you heard? It's about Ravensmere." "Yes, his betrayal of Lady Fairborn years ago. Turns out the Countess is that girl. Imagine it cast aside a future queen." Nathaniel stiffened where he stood. Faces turned. Fans fluttered. And just like that, the scandal he thought buried clawed its way back into the light. The man speaking was Lord Rowley, a petty noble with a talent for cruelty. He smiled, enjoying the attention. "Let us not forget," Rowley continued loudly, "that Ravensmere threw her to the wolves to protect his own skin. Fortune favored her. But what of the Duke? A man who betrays love for reputation hardly deserves either." Laughter. Soft, poisonous. Nathaniel's blood chilled. "That is enough," he said, stepping forward. His voice carried command, but not calm. "You speak of matters you do not understand." Rowley smirked. "I understand pride and cowardice." The room went silent. For a moment, Nathaniel considered striking him. The anger was that palpable. But before he could speak, a hush swept the chamber. The doors opened. A woman entered. The Countess of Lyon. Isabella did not come to the parliamentary reception to intervene. She had been invited by the Prime Minister himself for discussions of Franco-British art patronage. But fate had impeccable timing. Her entrance stole every breath from the room. She glided forward, head held high, her gown of dark emerald shimmering like a blade wrapped in velvet. Her presence silenced even Lord Rowley. Nathaniel stepped back, heart pounding. "Countess," Rowley said with a flourish, bowing low, performing respect he didn't feel. She regarded him with cool indifference. "My lord," he gestured toward Nathaniel. "We were just discussing the Duke's past indiscretions. Surely you recall." "I recall many things," Isabella said, voice calm and steady. "But what I recall most is that certain men are very brave when attacking a woman who cannot answer back." Rowley blinked. I beg your pardon, Countess." "You should," she replied softly, "but not from me." Her gaze sharpened as she looked around the room. This chamber prides itself on civility, yet its members gossip like bored debutantes. A dry, shocked ripple went through the assembly. Then she looked at Nathaniel. His chest tightened. Would she condemn him? Expose his past? Watch him fall as he once watched her? A breathless silence. At last, she spoke. "Let me be very clear," Isabella said, her voice ringing through the hall. "A man's reputation should not be built on the ruin of a woman, nor should a woman's future depend on the grace of a man." Some nodded. Others paled. She continued, "What happened years ago is not my shame, nor is it the Duke's shame. It is simply a chapter I have closed." Rowley sputtered, But surely the public ought to know." "Know what?" Isabella asked mildly. "That a foolish boy made a foolish choice? That two young people bowed to the weight of expectation?" She smiled faintly. "If that were a crime, half the nobility would be in chains." Laughter broke out, not cruel but knowing. Rowley flushed. Isabella stepped closer to Nathaniel. Her voice softened, though not for him alone. "I forgive what was done, not because he deserves it, but because I refuse to let an old wound define me." Forgiveness. Spoken like a queen granting peace to a defeated kingdom. Nathaniel's throat tightened. He bowed his head, not in shame but in reverence. "Countess," he began. She lifted a hand, silencing him. "Do not mistake this for reconciliation. Forgiveness is a gift I give myself." Her gaze held his for a heartbeat. A flicker of something passed between them, not love, not hate, but recognition. Then she stepped back, addressing the room once more. "If there is a scandal tonight, it is not mine." She turned toward Rowley. "It is yours for thinking a woman's past is more damning than your own present." Gasps. A few scattered applause. Rowley stumbled backward, mortified, while Isabella moved toward the exit, every step as controlled as a coronation march. She had not humiliated Nathaniel. She had protected herself, and in doing so, she revealed her true strength. She could destroy him. She chose not to, and that choice made her the most powerful person in the room. Nathaniel watched her go breathless, shaken, undone. The woman he once abandoned had risen beyond vengeance, beyond hurt, beyond his reach, and she left him standing there with the realization that he had lost far more than her love. He had lost the right to stand beside the woman she had become. The night after the parliamentary scandal settled into silence, London buzzed like a shaken beehive. Every salon, every tea room, every corridor of aristocratic gossip carried the same stunned refrain. "The Countess of Lyon spared the Duke. She is not merely powerful, she is magnificent. She has become everything he once feared, and everything he now craves." But while society devoured the tale, one man lived inside the ruin of it. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Duke of Ravensmere. He retreated to his townhouse like a man struck by lightning, not wounded, but awakened. He could no longer hide behind pride, not after what he had seen in her eyes. Strength forged from betrayal. Compassion sharpened by survival. A heart that had learned how to rule itself. And he knew with painful clarity that he had lost her long before she ever left England. When he learned she had departed England again, back to the world she had built, without him, he did not hesitate. Ravensmere estate be damned. Reputation be damned. Pride long, his closest companion, silenced at last. He left for Paris under a grey dawn, the kind of dawn that births either hope or heartbreak. Travelling with only one valet, he crossed the Channel in freezing wind, his jaw set, his mind echoing her words. "The girl you once betrayed is gone. I do not need forgiveness, I grant it for myself." But beneath her strength, he had seen something she didn't hide well enough, a loneliness deeper than pride could ever fill. He followed that truth all the way to France. The Lyon estate rose like a palace carved from sunlight and marble. Roses climbed its walls, fountains danced in the distance. It was a kingdom built by a woman who taught herself to rise. Nathaniel arrived just as the afternoon light spilled gold across the gardens. A servant tried to announce him, but he raised a hand. "No titles," he said. "No formality. Just lead me to her." The servant hesitated, then nodded. "She's in the magnolia garden, your sir." Nathaniel's heart pounded as he walked the path lined with white blossoms. At the end, beneath an arch of blooming branches, stood Isabella, not Countess Isolde, not the girl he once courted, but the woman who carried both past and present with regal ease. She wore a gown of soft white, her hair pinned loosely, a book in her hand. Sunlight kissed her skin. She looked peaceful, untouchable, but when she saw him, she froze. "Nathaniel?" His name on her lips felt like a wound reopening. He bowed deeply, reverently as no duke bows to anyone short of royalty. "Isabella," he said quietly, "I came because I could not let silence be the last word between us." She closed her book. "And what word do you seek?" He swallowed hard. "Truth. The confession." He approached slowly, as though she might vanish like breath on glass. "I loved you," he began, voice trembling. "I was a coward. My father raised me to believe reputation was everything. But losing you taught me the truth. Pride is only fear dressed as power." Isabella inhaled softly, her gaze unreadable. He continued, each word razor-sharp with honesty. "I saw you again and realized I had never known love at all, not until I saw what I lost." A long silence. She looked at him not with the cold distance of the banquet, nor the composed neutrality of the scandal, but with something raw and honest. "Nathaniel," she whispered, "you broke me. You did, but I rebuilt myself. I learned to breathe without you, to live without you, to rise without you." He nodded, his voice cracking. "I know, and I would never ask you to be the girl you once were. I came because the man I am now wants to kneel before the woman you became." Her breath caught. He dropped to one knee, not as the heir of Ravensmere, not as the Duke of England, but as a man stripped of every shield. Tears glimmered in his eyes. "Isabella, I do not ask for forgiveness. I ask for a beginning, if you can bear to let me prove myself worthy." She stared at him, the man who once shattered her heart, now kneeling in the garden she had grown from her own ashes. Slowly, she reached out and touched his cheek. "You kneel now," she said softly, "because you finally understand the weight of what you lost." "Yes," he whispered, "and the weight of what I hope to gain." "And if I say no," she asked, voice trembling. "Then I will stand and walk away," he said, tears slipping freely now, "and I will honor that choice for the rest of my life." Her fingers brushed his jaw. "And if I say yes," he closed his eyes, "then I will spend forever loving you the way I should have from the beginning." She lifted his chin. "Nathaniel," she whispered, "I am not the girl you once chose pride over." "I know," he breathed. "I am a woman who stands on her own power." "I know. I am not asking for a man to save me." "You are the one who saved me," he whispered. A long, trembling silence. Then, with a softness that carried the force of rebirth, she said, "Rise, not as the Duke I once loved, but as the man I choose now." His breath broke. He rose. She stepped into his arms, and the garden, the very world, seemed to shimmer around them as they kissed, not with the innocence they once had, but with the strength they had earned. For the first time, he held her as his equal, and for the first time, she loved him without losing herself. Above them, magnolia petals drifted like blessings, and so it was not pride, nor vengeance, nor fate that crowned them. It was love reborn in two hearts, brave enough to bow and rise together.